Hello.
Hi, please.
You're speaking to him.
Hi, I'm calling from the OPCC.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. So, as I probably mentioned in my email, we've received your complaint, and we're just in the process, I guess, of kind of determining the admissibility of the complaint. I think you've been through the process here before, so you're probably familiar with that.
Yeah. So you call this an admissibility process?
So right now, what happens initially when we first receive a complaint, we determine the admissibility, saying see if it's admissible, meaning there was misconduct by the officer, or if it's inadmissible, if there was no misconduct by the officer, and this is all done in conjunction to the Police Act. So that's kind of like the beginning stage. So we're just kind of information gathering and reading your information. If we need further questions, we'll call you. That's why I'm calling today, just to get some further clarification on some stuff. And then that's kind of where you determine the admissibility first, and that's the kind of the first stage.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. And I guess for me calling today, I just to kind of always talk to the complainant and get some further details. It sometimes comes across better than versus the email kind of going back and forth. So some of the questions I have are, I guess, because there was a case previously at our office that you had in relation to something similar to this complaint, but that was from 2015, correct?
Well, you'll have to refresh my memory on that. So from 2015, it would have been the same officer. Is that not true?
I think I'm just reading by your email here.
2015. 2015 was quite some time ago, right?
Yeah, so this is from. So what your complaint basically also involves, I'm just trying to figure out, if it's the same number or for a different number. So in 2015, your complaint now for this one is that for Sgt Stephen Jackel of BPD, who did not investigate the report of a child rape.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and that's the basis of the complaint now that we have here.
Okay, yes. So it was Officer Stephen Jackel. I had in 2015 had email communication with him, and I believe I had also phone communication with him and the Vancouver Police, which he had worked for. 2015 was an interesting time in that Stephen Jackel was also the lead police officer that showed up on the scene when Miles Gray was beaten to death by some Vancouver police officers. So that may have been a tumultuous time for Stephen Jackel, because he would have been ultimately responsible for that murder because he was the lead officer. So 2015 is the exact same time that I came to Stephen Jackel. I came to the Vancouver Police. I was directed by, I believe it was Surrey or Delta Police, to take it to the Vancouver Police. And what had happened is I had witnessed a brutal child rape many years prior to 2015. But in 2015, the same perpetrator started grooming my children, even though there was an order on him through the civil courts not to have contact with my kids. He was aggressively grooming my children, and this is a bad character, a really bad apple. Anyways, I tried to convey this to the Vancouver Police, and for some reason, it seemed I was knocking on a door that just wouldn't open. The police would just not communicate with me properly. So I pushed it, and I seemed to really get nowhere. Now, I've since done an FOI, Freedom of Information, and did a little bit of investigation, and it seems that a very dubious person from the Ministry of Children and Family Development by the name of William Strickland. I don't know if you're familiar with that name at all?
No, we don't have to do anything with MCFD, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, this fellow, William Strickland, had a court case, and you remember he worked for the BC government, that he had previously instructed a Vancouver police officer to ignore a child sexual assault claim by a mother who had claimed that her children were being sexually assaulted. One of them was being sexually assaulted. And in 2015, it actually went to court where it was shown in its case law, I guess, on the CanLaw website, where he had instructed the Vancouver police to basically do what he did to me, to ignore a complaint regarding a sexual assault. So my FOI files show me that not only Stephen Jackel, but another officer at the same time, his name was David Gibson. So we may want to add David Gibson. I've got a badge number here for him. He also came up in the FOI file. And it seems that this William Strickland had instructed maybe one or both of these officers to ignore my complaint and evidence of a sexual assault I witnessed, and then the grooming of the same fella coming after my kids in 2015. So that kind of summarizes what I'm up against here.
Yeah, so the complaint that you had here in 2015, it was against Constable Gibson, and it was, I believe, for the touching of the children. I think it was your children or some other children. I haven't actually read that file fully yet, but
okay. Well, hold on. I'll say for the record here. Yeah, it was one of my sons who was quite young at the time, and it was called the Spider Game. So when you read through the file, this grooming was a spider game where my brother-in-law would pretend he was a spider and run his hand up and down my child's leg. And remember, this is the same guy who I caught sexually assaulting, raping a child. I mean, it was a brutal rape, not just a sexual assault. This was full-on rape of another boy child. So you can imagine I was devastated. And I see on the FOI files, one of the reasons they minimized it was because I was irate and upset. I think the FOI file from the Vancouver police shows, which you can imagine I probably really was quite upset in 2015 when this was happening.
Okay. And so do you remember in 2015, for that thing, do you remember exactly what you reported at that time?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
What did you advise them in 2015?
I advised in 2015 that I had actually come to the Vancouver police a few times. So I had first approached, I believe it was Delta, and then I think I was bounced over to Surrey because the perpetrator was living in Surrey, and then they bounced me to Vancouver, so the Vancouver police. And I had told the Vancouver police that I had a recording of my ex-partner, my ex-wife, downplaying the sexual assault. I had recorded her in 2008, knowing, and she had minimized the sexual assault for many years previous to that. But I had come to the police with extreme concerns, like almost on the edge of tears, that this guy was going after my kids now, and that he had a history. I'd caught him raping a child. So I had made it clear to any officer that would listen to me to both those points. And the first time they told me, I showed up at the Vancouver police station on Boundary Road. And from there, I was bounced over I was told to go to the police station on, I think it's the Canby Street Bridge.
Okay.
The fairly new police station. So it was almost like they were playing games, like it was all a big joke to them. Like, here I am reporting a sexual assault on my kids, grooming. It was not a sexual assault. I don't believe my kids were inappropriately touched below their clothing, but he was in the process of grooming. And then the other sexual assault that I had witnessed years earlier. And I made it very clear to any officer and all officers what I was reporting, and plus I had provided the documents from civil court, I don't know. Have you listened to the audio at all? I guess you wouldn't do that.
No, because right now, as I said, we're kind of just information gathering, so I'm just trying to get some information from you first, and then
okay,
go from there.
It's quite a powerful audio of my ex-wife poo-pooing the rape and telling me that rape happens in hockey and Cub Scouts anyway, so we should just ignore it and it will go away, kind of thing. And that was her And that was one of the reasons I finally left her, was the family's just a batshit Catholic, just weird people. I don't know. I've never met other people like that in my life. I was young when I married her. That's the only thing I can say. Young and dumb, I guess, right?
And then what did they advise you when you went there? What did they say to you when you reported this?
I just got the runaround. I was passed from officer to officer. The one on Boundary, I don't know. I can't remember his name, if he was David Gibson or not. I just remember he had 1 or 2 hearing aids, and he was an older fella. And he had a notepad, and he met me in the lobby. So I didn't even go up to, the offices or anything. We had spoken in the lobby. And after we had spoken and he took a few notes, he said that I have to go to the police station on Cambie. And there I remember I met 2 officers. The one I spoke to seemed quite young. So I don't believe he was Stephen Jackel or David Gibson at that time. But I could be wrong. If anything, I think he was possibly Asian, and these fellas don't sound like they got Asian names. So yeah, it honestly, they just didn't take it serious, and I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't wrap my head around how I could go to the police station and report a grooming and a sexual assault with a guy with a long criminal history. One was including he had ran someone over and killed him and dragged him like a block down the street. Bragged to me he was high on cocaine when he did that. And I was just like taken aback that I could provide, the audio recording. It was brought before the civil court, proven to be legit. Like they had an opportunity to say, maybe it was, edited or made up or something, or that wasn't my ex-wife's voice who was, in her words, poo-pooing the child rape. And it was like I wasn't being heard. It was like it was just a big joke. I was reporting a fender bender car accident on the road. And it's not till just of recent when I did this FOI, and I just got this back probably about a week and a half ago. And it clearly shows that they got a call from the Ministry of Children, and they had been in communication with them from what I could read of the documents, a lot of it's redacted, but to basically ignore it, right? And then again, I think it's so important to point out that this William Strickland from the Ministry of Children and Family Development had contacted the Vancouver police before. I believe the officer's name was Pollard, Pollard, and had instructed him to ignore a different, completely different case where a mother had reported a sexual assault on their child, and that had gone before the Supreme Court. So I just can't say enough about that. This is really, concerning, right? I mean, this is concerning that this is kind of been overlooked in the Vancouver police for so long. So I don't know if you know now that there is an inspector working on this. So we've no more constables or sergeants working on this. Now we have an actual inspector from the sex crime unit working on my case regarding this file.
They have. Oh, okay. So you are working. You've talked to VPD, and they are working on this actively right now?
Well, it's an old file now. It's from, this original rape that I witnessed happened, we're looking at probably 30 years ago now. And I talked to the fella's ex-wife, the perp's ex-wife. She unequivocally believes there's more victims out there. And that's her gut feeling. She has no proof. I believe there's other victims out there. And I, had many conversations now with this new inspector looking after this case. And yeah, it's an old case. It's all under a different file now, and he's investigating it, but there's not really much he's going to be able to do. And the victim, and I will point out for the record that the FOI file shows that David Gibson, this police officer from the Vancouver Police, claims that I did not know who the victim was. And that is a complete 100% fabrication. All throughout this, I've known who the victim was, and I've clearly stated to the police who the victim was. So not only is David Gibson, and Stephen Jackel taking direction from the Ministry of Children, who have an extremely dubious history of covering up sex abuse, they're also fabricating files in that everybody knew, everybody, including the audio recording evidence, where I clearly, my ex-wife and I are talking, and we're very clear about who the victim of this sexual assault was. And this is the first one from 30 years ago. So I just can't say enough. I don't believe David Gibson was just being lazy. I believe he was being disingenuous. To what level, I don't know. But he could have taken direction from the ministry. Maybe the ministry, but never should have been taking direction from the ministry. But that's one thing. But then to put in the police file that I didn't know the name of the victim, or it just says victim unknown, not redacted. It says actually unknown. That is extremely concerning, right?
Okay, so just to backtrack here, so what's happening? Tell me what the inspector has advised you that is looking into this file. So you've contacted BPD. They've stated that they've reopened this file, or he is looking into these allegations. Like, is this an open case right now?
It is. It's got a new file number. He did some investigation, so he was pretty honest in saying that I can't really know much about it, because remember, I'm neither the victim nor the perp, right? So I'm a third party to this. So he's explained that I get to know very little, but he did indicate that from the way he spoke that he has gone to the victim, and the victim does not want to proceed with any sort of charges, and they do not want to talk about it. So essentially this is now a cold case. There's nothing that can be done, right? I mean, this guy's name is out there with the Vancouver Police. I guess if someone else comes forward now, it might be put together with this case. I don't know, but yeah, from what I understand, there was a new file number opened about 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and then then this inspector has done his work on this, and basically, I don't think the victim wants to move forward on it, so there's nothing he can do. Remember, the victim now is, he would probably be 40 years old, something like that. Maybe just under 40.
Okay, so I guess that's the question is then, so your complaint is basically that they didn't investigate the report. So at this point, if they did investigate the report, what investigative steps do you think that the police failed, or what should they have taken? But my understanding is that they did actually just look into this now.
Well, we're talking three different people here, right? We're talking Sgt Stephen Jackel, the very dubious Sgt Stephen Jackel involved in the Miles Gray Vancouver police murder, and then David Gibson, and this is from 2015, right? These two officers. Whether
and your complaint against Constable Gibson was in 2015, and that was the touching of the children, and that's the one that you had brought forward to us already. So I think that one's already been dealt with, but my understanding here, and that was found to be inadmissible, and that's in 2015. That was brought forward on Constable Gibson.
What do you mean inadmissible?
Like, that's my understanding, because that's what your old file number that you, from 2015, you made a complaint here to our office against Constable Gibson of the VPD, of the touching of children.
That is unequivocally untrue. I came to the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, which I know is just an arm of the Vancouver Police, and I came and said, And I couldn't remember the name of I can't remember the name of the officer from that complaint, but it would have been Stephen Jackel and or David Gibson. And I said that I had reported a child rape. And I'm reporting a child rape. In 2015, I reported a child rape. And I had, in 2015, also reported sexual grooming by the rapist on my children. And these officers... I can't believe you only have David Gibson's name from 2015 because I'm looking
at.
You know, and again, this is the whether it's intentional or just dysfunction. I mean, I came to the office of the Police Complaints Commissioner with 2 complaints, right? That these officers had ignored a child rape and it had ignored sexual touching of my children, and now. And then you guys had done an investigation, apparently, whitewash.
There was,
I guess, a whitewash, but how could you have possibly done an investigation when now, in 2024, I'm finding out through documents that William Strickland, the BC government, had contacted the Vancouver police when they should not have contacted the police and said, "Ignore this rape." Ignore the spider games, ignore the sexual grooming, and ignore the rape. I mean,
how could... The 2015 complaint, you had I'm just going to clarify this. In 2015, you put a complaint against Sgt Gibson, or Constable Gibson, of the touching of your children. That we didn't investigate. That was still at the admissibility stage, is from what it looks like, because I was not here in 2015. And I'm just reading what I had seen, and it was in the admissibility stage. And that was deemed inadmissible in 2015.
Okay, hold on a second. I can probably... Do you know what you just said? That I had put a complaint against David Gibson for sexual touching.
No. Sorry. Constable Gibson for the touching, or did investigate the touching of your children.
Did investigate it?
Did not.
Did not, exactly. Well, whether he did or did not, he did not do a proper and thorough job regarding the spider games. From what I understand, he never contacted the perp. He never contacted my children. And all he did was maybe make a phone call. That was good enough for him. I believe he didn't even do that because he had got a phone call. Again, this is really important. He had got a phone call or some kind of communication from a William Strickland, a guy who was brought before the Supreme Court. William Strickland worked for the Ministry of Children and Family Development, the BC government, who in 2015 was also being accused and was convicted of downplaying and calling the police, a Sgt Pollard, to ignore another rape accusation. So you see this? How could the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner have done their job in 2015 when you didn't even know who this William Strickland was? I mean, you guys didn't even pull the FOI files.
We don't look.
So
we
how
don't
could
look at MCFD? Like, we don't have jurisdiction. So I'm just letting you know. So that case in 2015 that you had, or that complaint you had brought forward, from my records, from what I see, because as I said, that wasn't me. That was the investigator for that, nor was I here. Just based on what I'm reading from that complaint in 2015. That was deemed inadmissible by our office.
That's a pretty ambiguous word, though. You can imagine where that just makes my blood boil. It was deemed inadmissible. What was inadmissible? I had reported a rape and grooming, and this officer, David Gibson, and Stephen Jackel, got a call from the ministry to say, ignore the rape and ignore the grooming, and that is what they did. And not only that, David Gibson put on there that on the FOI file, which I have, which apparently you don't even know from your the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner doesn't even know about the rape. Yet on the FOI files, the rape is on there. And the victim is unknown, which is not true because the victim was known all the way through. So in good conscience, how can you tell me that your organization, the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, did their job in 2015 when you don't know any of this stuff? How could you have done an investigation on David Gibson if none of this stuff came up? You just basically put whether you were there, it doesn't matter. with a broad stroke, you just say it's inadmissible, which doesn't mean anything. It's basically
the investigator probably at that point. What do? We look at misconduct of police officers. MCFD, we have no jurisdiction over.
You don't need jurisdiction over the ministry. You don't need jurisdiction. The fact that someone called David Gibson and told him to ignore a rape, that's where you have jurisdiction, is it not?
So, did you not receive the notice of inadmissibility on December 9th of 2015?
So it's 2024 right now. Yes,
I know, but I'm asking because that was the complaint you had put in back then. There was nothing. It was against Constable Gibson. Now, the complaint that you came put forward to us now is in regards to Steve Jackel.
So, Stephen Jackel and David Gibson, in 2015, when I reported this rape, both worked for the Vancouver police. And I had been in communication with both of those officers regarding the child rape and the grooming. I know Stephen Jackel had, because I still have my emails, where he had received the auto recording, and it was the audio recording was taken to the Supreme Court, and it was taken to a transcriber and transcribed onto paper for the courts, because that's how they need it. David Gibson would have had that same information. I mean, unless you're telling me that Stephen Jackel, Constable Stephen Jackel and Constable David Gibson were not sharing information on this rape. I mean, it would be ludicrous to think that they both didn't have this information and evidence.
But your complaint in 2015 did not have Stephen Jackel in there. That's what I'm trying to advise you. Your complaint to this office in 2015 was just against Constable Gibson.
I find that remarkable. I find it remarkable that you claim that I, in 2015, when I reported this rape and sexual grooming, that I would only name one of the officers. I mean, I don't remember there being any phone call like this to me in 2015 to clarify. And I mean, I think it's wonderful that you actually called me to clarify the details, because it's so important to have everybody's name. I mean, when you investigated David Gibson for ignoring the rape and taking direction from William Strickland, which apparently you didn't even ask David Gibson, why he ignored the rape, why he ignored the sexual grooming. I mean, I don't know.
In 2015, there was no investigation. It was still at the admissibility stage, and the analyst in 2015 who looked at your file back then deemed it inadmissible. So there's no investigation. So based on the information that analyst had at that time, deemed it inadmissible for no misconduct.
So I've been running around and, claiming that the office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is corrupt, and is just an arm of the highly corrupt Vancouver Police. And I mean, for you to admit that in 2015, me reporting a rape and me providing evidence and an audio recording and the sexual grooming, and you guys in 2015 deemed it inadmissible. So essentially, this all came to your door, and an analyst said, it's inadmissible, and threw it all in the garbage. That's corruption.
That's not how it goes. That's what I was trying to advise you. Initially, when we first get your file, like I stated, we look at the admissibility of the complaint. If it's inadmissible or admissible.
Well, give me the criteria.
Based on what I'm reading.
Give me the criteria for admissible and unadmissible.
And so what I'm trying to, that's why I've called you today, because your new complaint is with Sgt Jackel. That's the information I was trying to get from you today. But I'm just looking back at your 2015 file, so I was just trying to get further information as to what was not done by police in 2015 based on your complaint now with Sgt Jackel. From what I've read, your complaint in 2015, I can read what your complaint says in 2015, that you reported there was a male to stop hugging your children, and you've asked him 2 separate occasions. You want to inform the police that Mr. stop hugging your children and to be assault charges to be laid against him. You believe that BPD had failed to assist you, and Mr. has a long history in court-documented family violence, cocaine abuse, and you've personally caught him raping approximately 30 years ago.
Well, there you go. So I did tell the police that.
So that's not the police. Like this is the complaint that you had put our office. That's what you advised our office, that the BPD member, Constable Gibson, failed to investigate that. And so whoever the investigative analyst at that point was in 2015.
Well, who was he? Who was he? Who was the investigative analyst?
I have to go back and look. Did you receive a copy in 2015? Do you remember?
I probably did. I was extremely stressed out at the time. I had a lot on the go. And essentially I contacted the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner hoping that I would get some kind of, integrity and this would be looked at. And when I, obviously read that back in 2015, which was many years ago, and I just threw my hands up in the air. I was exhausted from, dealing with this bureaucracy. I was a lot younger back then. And, I've left with a sour taste knowing that, rape and child abuse in British Columbia is so common that not only the Vancouver police think it's just a joke, that the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, who is responsible for regulating the Vancouver police, also think it's a joke. It's inadmissible. It's no big deal. I report a rape and the Vancouver police don't do anything. They absolutely did.
No, but now that you have just submitted another complaint, but you just advised me that the BPD opened the case 2 months ago and have looked into this incident, and that's what I'm trying to clarify, that this is an open case now again, and if they looked into it, but you advised me that they've spoken to the victim, that they don't want to proceed further.
Yeah, well, that's not what I said, and I'll cut you off right there, because it's really important, because the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner has this whole, narrative, and I think they just write what they feel like writing. I do not know if the inspector has contacted the victim, but I believe he has. So unlike this Sgt Stephen Jackel, who's an absolute goon, from what I understand, because I did a little research on with his guys, and he showed up after they murdered Miles Gray, and that's gone before the courts, right? And I think there was actually a conviction of one of the Vancouver police officers that was under the umbrella of Stephen Jackel, because he was their sergeant. So he sounds like a really dubious dirtbag from what I can see, but I don't know that, right? I mean, I haven't had time to do a lot of research on him. And this David Gibson, who I see on the FOI files, completely 100% fabricated and lied on that document and said that I did not know who the rape victim was. I mean, that is absolutely shocking. 2015, I was exhausted. I threw my hands up in the air and I said, the Vancouver police are corrupt. The Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is corrupt, and we know that the BC government has been, just has a massive history with child abuse and child abuse cover-ups, right? And here we have William Strickland that shows up in my FOI documents, which I never thought of doing an FOI, Freedom of Information search, back in 2015. I was younger, I was busy, I was working hard. I mean, I didn't have time for this bureaucracy and games going on and on and on and on, where you just throw your hands up. But now I'm finding out that William Strickland called the Vancouver police and said, this dad has just called up and reported a rape and sexual grooming by this guy who has a long, violent history. And he murdered somebody, for crying out loud. And although he did get off on that. But, I'm finding out now, all these years later, that, this whole thing, there's some real bad stuff happened here within the police and within, your organization and within the government. And this could have been all clarified if you guys were legit back in 2015. And instead of now an inspector in 2024 investigating this again, you guys could be fully responsible for many more victims, many more child victims being sexually abused because you did not do your job in 2015. I did not receive a phone call like this in 2015. I received a piece of paper that said it was inadmissible. And you're telling me right now you don't even know the name of the person who investigated this from the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner in 2015.
No, I can probably look into that. And that's not what I said, actually. And I can look into that. And go back into your records. As I said, I was not here
Well,
in
then what's his
2015.
name?
We are
I mean,
not,
you
we
have
are
a
not an
computer
arm
right
of
there.
also-
What's his name?
We are
Oh,
not
her
also
name.
a part of VPD. Just to clarify that, we are not police officers. Just to clarify that, and we are basically an independent office, and we provide the oversight for investigations. I am just clarifying information. That's all I'm calling to do today. And in order to the complaint that's brought before me today, which is the one that you just submitted for Stephen Jackel, and that he did not investigate a report of a child rape. But that's what my questions were, and you advised me that an investigator at VPD was looking into this, and so that was my question was, what investigative steps do you think the police failed to take at this point if they've opened the file recently to look into your concerns?
We're talking Stephen Jackel right now, are we not?
So your main component, no, so you're basically, I just want to clarify the complaint that you've submitted to us now. Is it regarding Stephen Jackel and that he failed to investigate a child rape that you reported in 2015?
Well, there's a little bit more to that. Yes, my complaint is against Sgt Stephen Jackel of the Vancouver Police Department. My complaint is that he did not investigate the child rape from 30 years ago, from today, the violent child rape that I personally witnessed with my eyes, and that he did not investigate that same sexual abuser coming after my kids with what was called the spider games. And that now I'm finding out in 2024 that Stephen Jackel and this David Gibson, who was apparently investigated in 2015, took direction from the Ministry of Children and Family Development to ignore this rape and to ignore the sexual grooming. So that's what my complaint is about.
Okay. And then in 2015, you did not advise about Sgt Jackel to our office, correct? You complained about Constable.
Yes, well, I wrote a quick summation to the Office of Police Complaints Commissioner regarding complaint against the Vancouver Police in general, and I had named, from what you can tell me, I had named this Sgt David Gibson. But with that, I should have received a call from the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, as I am today, that would have highlighted that there was more people involved, because I still have the emails from Sgt Stephen Jackel where I actually had sent him what was called the rape tape. It was the downplaying of the child rape by this Catholic family, by my downplaying it and poo-pooing it in her words, which is now and yeah, I won't say much more about that, but this video is no secret anymore, right? And how you guys can, and with a straight face, tell me that you did any investigation in 2015 is remarkable, absolutely remarkable.
As I said, it was an investigation, and that was just the admissibility phase back
That's
then.
right.
And
So
I'd
there
have
was
to go back through that file.
So I have to.
I'm not familiar from.
Right. So you're telling me that in 2015, when I came to the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, that this didn't even get through the front door. I had provided all this information, and basically, you guys just took it and threw it straight in the garbage, and there was no investigation whatsoever.
No, they would have reviewed the information you had provided back then, and to determine the admissibility back then. They wouldn't have just thrown it into the garbage. They would. It's a requirement that you go through the process and you determine the admissibility, you review the information at hand, and
based on what though?
Determination was made.
Based on what?
I haven't read the full file back then, because I'm dealing with the file that's out in my hands right now, that the one that you had just brought forward. Hence my conversation with you. So for now, I have the information I need for now, and I have to go back and look. So if I need anything further, I'll give you a call back.
Okay.
And I'll let you know.
So now that I'm finding out in 2024 here through the Freedom of Information files that were, again, heavily redacted by the Vancouver Police, but I am finding out that David Gibson had, whether intentionally, but it seems like a very dubious act of him writing that the victim's name was unknown, can I put in a further file against David Gibson, or one unilaterally against David Gibson and Stephen Jackel at this time?
I am just... You meaning like adding another complaint, like in conjunction with the one that you have in right now, like against David Gibson?
Well, it would make sense because both these officers worked together and were both part of my file in 2015 when I reported the rape and the sexual grooming. So would it not make sense to open a file against these officers together? Because
you can send in additional information if you want it to be added to your file. You can email the additional information that you have, and then based on that, and we will determine if we'd open up another file or if it would stay with this file. So if you want to forward any further information that you have, you can do that and send that via email.
Okay, well, I have the document, the FOI document, showing that this David Gibson had put on that file unknown. And on that same FOI file, it shows that he had taken instruction and was in communication with the Ministry of Children and Family Development that had downplayed, it basically told him to ignore the rape. Isn't that worthy of opening up the file against David Gibson now that this information has surfaced?
You can, as I said, submit your information that you have, and then we will review the information and then determine if we would open up a new file or if it would stay in with the conjunction with the old file. But you would have to submit what you have in order for us to review it.
Okay, me talking to you as an analyst of the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner would not be good enough. I'd have to actually do a bunch.
You'll have to send. If you could just send it in an email, with all the further information that you have, and because when you fill out a complaint form, we get you to write out your complaint on a form. So if there's additional information, it would be great if you could put it in writing and then just point out the facts. This is my additional information that I'd like to add, and then that would be easier.
Well, wouldn't it be a lot easier that you would just take notes directly from me right now, and then I just send you a quick email here with those two documents showing?
No, we would prefer if you put it in writing, because that we get all our complaints done in writing, and if you could add that, because I have another call to attend to right now, and I won't be able to sit here and write all your notes out. If you could just send out
that's absolute hogwash. I'll tell you that I deal with many bureaucrats, and that I have another phone call to go to is the go-to when you guys want to get off the phone and you don't want to answer a question and you're being
I've been on the phone for 45 minutes.
Well, this is about a rape. This is about a rape. This is about a rape cover-up. This is about a guy who, since 2015, could have been properly investigated by the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner and by the Vancouver Police, and as 2015 has gone completely under the radar and could be out there, could have been raping kids for all this time. Even his ex-wife I spoke to has massive concern that there's many more young boy victims out there, and you're too busy. You're too busy to talk to me. You're too busy to take notes.
I said just put it. You know what? I'm not going to let you shout at me on the phone. You can put I've been very straightforward. I said you can 100% add your information. If you'd like to add something further, just send me an email or put it in writing. That's all I'm requesting. I'm not saying I'm busy. I never said that. That's just putting words into my mouth. That's not what I said. I obviously called you to get further information. I'm not here to argue. I am here to listen, and that's what I've been doing. And if you have further information, just please send me an email. That's all I request.
Yeah, well, for you to minimize me and say I'm arguing, you can imagine I'm pretty passionate. I'm finding out now that
I'm not minimizing you. That's not what my intentions are here.
Well, that's what you're doing, because this is a rape.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
And
that's not what I'm doing.
You come across as defensive against me instead of working with me.
I am not defensive. I'm working with you, and I'm advising you to send an email to get further information that you would like to add.
Well,
I would like you to take. I'm not minimizing.
I would like you to take notes right now and put that on record that I'm requesting that David Gibson be reinvestigated because he had taken direction from William Strickland and the Ministry of Children Development to ignore this rape. I'm requesting that you take notes. So are you refusing to take notes? right now?
I'm not refusing, but I'm asking you to send an email, please. And I'm going to have to cut off the conversation, unfortunately. Please send an email. I'm not minimizing you. You're just putting words into my mouth. So please just send an email if you have further information to add to your complaint that's at our office at this moment.
Okay, I can do that right now.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, hold on, I'm not done speaking. I mean, this is important stuff. Can you say your name for the record? Raman. How do you spell your last name?
It's Bhawa.
And you're an investigative analyst for the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, and your phone number here is 250-953-4128?
Yes.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
Send me an email if you have further information.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that you would I'm not a little, I'm absolutely disgusted that you refused to write this information down and add this to the file right now and make me do a bunch of runaround. I mean, this sounds like 2015.
It's not a runaround, it's straightforward.
Please don't cut me off.
Please just send
This is important. This is about a rape. This is about the Vancouver Police taking direction from the BC government to ignore this rape, and with a history of telling the Vancouver Police to ignore another rape. And this is important stuff. I mean, if you don't have time, to take my request to add this to the file right now, I find that remarkable and shocking, right? I mean, that's just, it's thoroughly disgusting. It's what it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, I wasn't giving you a compliment. Oh, she just hung up on me. So you have to understand that the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, their sole goal is, unless stuff gets into the newspaper, their sole directive is to minimize, reduce, and bury complaints. So the only way the only way that police are ever held to account is if you catch them on audio or catch them on video and you publish it on the bloody internet. Vancouver, British Columbia is just a cesspool of corruption, and the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is just an arm of the highly corrupt Vancouver Police. And I can't say enough about this file. And there must be, hundreds and hundreds of more files out there like this. And this Raman Badjaw, so her first name is RAMANBAJWA. I believe her only goal was to contact me to see who I was and to see if she could essentially just throw this file in the garbage. And, that's their goal. And so I've recorded this, and I think it's good for the public to know what's going on with the Vancouver Police, with the British Columbia government calling the Vancouver Police and giving them direction regarding, serious crimes. And, it's these organizations should not be taking direction. The police should not be taking direction from the BC government, the dysfunctional and highly corrupt BC government, right? We know from history that the BC government employees were caught abusing children within the system. We also know from a previous court documents that the ministry was calling the Vancouver Police and telling them to ignore complaints of child rape. And this had gone to the Supreme Court. And nothing ever changes in British Columbia. It's just these files happen, these court cases happen, and everybody forgets. And you can see Badja here says, well, I wasn't working back then. She doesn't even know the name of the analyst from back then that took this Constable David Gibson file and threw it in the garbage. And it wasn't just a complaint against David Gibson. It was also a complaint against Sgt Stephen Jackel, right? And the Vancouver Police in general for ignoring this child rape I reported and for ignoring the sexual grooming. Yeah. I just can't say enough. These people are absolutely disgusting, and they're just paper pushers, and their whole agenda is to just pile up the paper on you, stall as long as they can. Years, sometimes these pre-investigations. So this isn't even an investigation. This is like the pre-investigation. These will drag out for months, years, and then they say, oh, there wasn't enough to open a file, to even open a file, to look at the evidence, and then they throw it in the garbage, and then it's up to people like me to go in, gather it all up, and reapply, and then they just put bureaucratic hurdles in front of you over and over again, and eventually you just give up. And that's what I did in 2015. I probably got this letter from the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner. Maybe I didn't even get it, because you know what? I was moving at about that time, so they may have not even sent it registered mail to make sure I got it. Probably sent it to the wrong address. That is the dysfunction within our government, our highly corrupt government, because it is corruption when you knowingly let things go off the rails when it's your job to hold the police to account, and you intentionally act dysfunctional, forget stuff, mail things to the wrong people, investigate one officer even though I had told them about 2 officers. This stuff is intentional corruption. The worst, in government, and this is essentially government. The Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is an arm of the Vancouver Police, which is an arm of the BC government. They're all buddies. They all, the top guys are all on speed dial, and it's almost beneficial for them to do a worse job. Unless things get in the newspaper, their job is to do a worse job. It's the only industry where the worse job you do, the more bad of a job you do, the more hours you get, and the less accountable you are, right? Can you imagine, like, say an Amazon, a company that's very, very efficient, just beyond, I've done, Amazon is just absolutely shocking how efficient they are, but they're a well-run organization. They hold their sellers to account. I recently had an issue with an Amazon seller who quickly, was held to account by Amazon, and just the efficiency and the speed. And they deal with literally millions and millions of people, but they have systems in place and they do an efficient job. But when you come to the BC government, the Vancouver Police, the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, which is just a quasi-government, quasi-Vancouver Police arm, they don't have to do a good job. If this perp, I reported him in 2015. If he evaded, and so did this, David Gibson, Constable David Gibson, and Constable Stephen Jackel, they all evaded any kind of accountability. This perp, the rapist, he wasn't questioned. The victim wasn't approached and said, did this happen? Do you want to talk to us? I know you're now a grown man, but they did not do their job. So this guy thinks that nobody's watching him, and he is going on, most likely continuing to abuse children. I mean, these guys do not stop at 1 child or 2 children. They just keep going and going and going. That's their thing. They're sexual predators. And even this, David Gibson and Stephen Jackel do a shitty job. They don't do their job. Looks like they even may have fabricated police documents. The Vancouver Police told me previous that they couldn't even find files where I had reported any of this stuff in 2015. And then I said, well, I still have emails from the Stephen Jackel on my computer from 2015. And then miraculously they went, oh, yeah, we do have some files. You did report the rape in 2015, right? there's no accountability. These cops, you know, they know that there's no accountability. They know that this is all a big fucking joke. And so what happens is they just get more corrupt and more corrupt and more corrupt and more laxy-daxy, more shitty at doing their job. And then criminals get better and they get more emboldened. And the whole system essentially falls apart. And all we have to do right now is look around Vancouver. We got all this, they say, oh, well, it's all mental health issues. Everyone's got mental health issues. And the price of living is going up, so everyone's living in fucking tents. That's 100% not true. It is dysfunction within the police, within the government, within the policymakers, within the bureaucrats, within, organizations like the highly, highly, highly corrupt Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner. All these people in power know that there's no accountability and there's no requirement to do a good, thorough job. So they do a shitty job, and then we have a whole system that slowly starts eroding. And where do you see it? You see it down on the street. You see massive, epic drug use. When people know that the drugs are deadly, yet they're still fucking doing drugs. That is just absolute insanity. But it's because the whole system is falling apart because essentially the real root here, the root cause is zero accountability. There is zero accountability within police, within government. There is no accountability. And I believe, that is a root cause of why the social fabric is breaking down on all levels, right? It reverberates all through society. And, from the distrust of government to, distrust of the police, which is, I don't trust the police. Honestly, I have friends that are police officers, and yes, they're good, wholesome people. But, there's probably a large percentage of police that know there is no accountability. And, and this Badja had said that the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is not the police. They're not police officers. She's doing a word game because a lot of the people that work at the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner are ex-police officers, or they have been lifelong involved in law enforcement. So just word games, right? It's word games, it's bureaucracy, and that's what the government does, and that's what the Vancouver Police do, and that's what the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner does, which is just government, and they just play word games, and they just play bureaucracy games, and they do not do their job. And I can tell you right now that this analyst really probably wishes she did not call me. Her job was to downplay this to see if I'd be okay if this file was be thrown in the garbage again, like the file was thrown in the garbage that I reported in 2015, right? And 2015, I was not savvy and aware of just how corrupt the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner is, and how corrupt the Vancouver police are and how dysfunctional they are. In 2024, now I know they are, so I'm prepared. When she called me, I'm prepared to talk to her, right? And she did not like that. And she 100% fabricated the fact that she had to go to another call. She just wanted to get off the phone with me. I've seen that a lot, right? I talk to bureaucrats quite a bit, and that is a go-to, and it's getting kind of old now. I should actually, if I had the time and energy, and what they hope is you don't have the time and energy to pursue this, right? It's just another person who doesn't trust the police or doesn't trust the regulatory body of the police. But, and it's true, I'm just another person. There might only be like 10,000 of us out there, right? It's not that not everybody has to deal with the police in this regard all the time. Many people just give up. Many people don't even know that you can file a complaint against a police officer. Yeah, and 90% of those will be thrown in the garbage by an investigative analyst. Like, they won't even be investigated. They'll just be thrown in the garbage right from the get-go before even anything's looked at. Now, It's bizarre how you can do an investigation regarding the admissibility of a complaint without looking at the evidence. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? But it's called corruption, right? It's just start tossing these files in the garbage as fast as you can go. She says, well, we don't really toss them in the garbage. We file them, right? They put them in a cabinet somewhere and they sit. So she called up, didn't even know the name of the analyst who had tossed, this David Gibson's, Constable David Gibson's file aside in 2015, right? So it's just, it's just absolute nonsense. I mean, I can find out anything you want on this Constable Stephen Jackel in 5 minutes using the internet and using my my emails. You tell me that the Office of Police Complaints Commissioner cannot quickly look up who the analyst was in 2015 who tossed the Constable David Gibson file aside and called it inadmissible regarding the rape he did not investigate and the sexual grooming he did not investigate. Maybe back then they would have prevented this perp from continuing on. They could not have saved any of the past victims, but they could have saved future child victims if they had done their job, and they didn't. So rape is on the bureaucrats. I know you see the connection here. By them not doing their job, by this Stephen Jackel, David Gibson, William Strickland, and this Baja from the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, by these sort of people not doing their job back then, they contribute. So since 2015, this perp could have been stopped in 2015, but he wasn't, because all these files were just tossed aside and called inadmissible. So he went on and abused, and we don't know for sure if he did. Maybe he just became a Boy Scout. Maybe, I don't want to say that, Boy Scout, yeah. Maybe he became maybe he became reformed and decided not to rape little boys anymore, right? Maybe, but maybe not. And because the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner didn't do their job, he had ample opportunity to continue on with his sexual abuse, which again is a contributor to people doing drugs, doing alcohol, because a lot of times sex abuse victims they self-medicate and they become self-destructive. And all we have to do is look at the streets of Vancouver. All we have to do is look at the First Nations reserves. All we have to do is look at British Columbia and just the fucking, and I'm trying not to swear too much, but the fucking rampant debauchery. And the police play games again, telling us the crime's going down. Oh, crime just went up a teeny little bit. It's not true, because crimes do not get reported. And I think, I just can't say enough with the games they play. It's all politics. It's all dysfunction in government and them trying to do the least amount of work possible. And it's costing the citizens of British Columbia and Canada hugely. And I think it's starting to pile up. And there's, more of this dysfunction, layers upon layers upon layers, where now, is it even reversible? Because they're so now overwhelmed with, how many rape victims go on to rape, to do the same thing. They say that, children that were beaten have a tendency to beat their kids, right? You come from an alcoholic family, you have a higher chance of being an alcoholic yourself. So by not nipping this in the bud in 2015, the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner and the Vancouver Police and, the Ministry of Children and Family Development, this William Strickland, are all responsible, 100% responsible for all the future dysfunction that happened after 2015 regarding this case, right? And it could tentacle out. I mean, one victim, one perp can do so much damage. And how can you blame the perp? How can you blame the rapist? No one ever told him not to do this, right? No police officer came to him and said, we know we have a report against you for child rape.
we have a report against you for grooming. And he would go, yeah, no, I didn't do it. But maybe then now he's on the radar and he stops doing what he's doing, right? We can't save the victims before, but maybe we can save some victims going forward, because sometimes a bright, shiny light on the bad guy stops them from doing future crimes, or at least slows them down, right? But Sgt Stephen Jackel, David Gibson, Officer David Gibson, they did not approach this guy. They did not approach the perpetrator, and they did not approach the victim. And they did not do their job because, whether it was because they got the call from William Strickland, maybe Sgt Stephen Jackel was too busy covering up the Miles Gray murder. I don't know. I haven't done a lot of research on the Miles Gray murder by the police. Remember, this is the Vancouver police that went. Miles Gray had squirted someone with a garden hose. Police came in, chests all puffed out, and they beat him to fucking death. They beat him like a fucking dog, and they killed him. And that went before the Supreme Court. Stephen Jackel, the same guy I reported the rape to, was the lead head officer that showed up on scene and claimed he never saw any blood. He just, Miles Gray just decided to die all on his own, apparently. But I haven't read that whole report, but I do know that the Vancouver police were held responsible by the Supreme Court for Miles Gray's murder. But again, because there's no accountability, and there's no record keeping to any large degree. I mean, apparently that you can get your hands on right away. Was Stephen Jackel held to account in that regard? Or maybe he was too busy with that. And when I told him about the child rape, he's like, well, thinking in his head, what child rape? What's the big deal about children getting raped by men? What's the big deal? My guy's just fucking murdered a dude, and I got to cover it up, right? Who knows what was going through Sgt Stephen Jackel. And I didn't know about the Miles Gray murder. And Stephen Jackel's history when I reported the rape to him, right? And I don't even remember which officer he was. So if he was the fellow with hearing aids, whether he was the young officer, I'm not sure even which officer he was, right? I mean, I did not keep detailed notes as I do now. And I suggest to anybody, when you're dealing with the police officer, whether you're dealing with the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, or whether you're dealing with the BC government, always record them. Document them and record them, because you'll find out down the road their story will not align with what was actually said, right? And a perfect example is, and I'll bring this up again, Constable David Gibson, on my FOI papers, and that's Freedom of Information, I applied to have these documents released just some weeks ago, and I received these, I think, just like 2 weeks ago, maybe even a little later than that, but it shows on those documents the very false statement that I did not know who the rapist was. Or no, I didn't know I knew who the rapist was, but I didn't know who the victim was. And I 100% knew who the victim was. I 100% told him. And not only that, I had provided evidence of an audio recording where I am talking about who did the rape. And we talk about who the victim is in great detail. And that evidence went to, and I still have the email, to Sgt Stephen Jackel and David Gibson. So for them to say that I didn't know who the victim was is a 100% bold-faced, malicious lie. And that is the Vancouver police, And where are you going to go? Who are you going to tell? Who are you going to tell on the Vancouver police? There's only one organization, and it is the Vancouver police. The Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, which is made up of police officers and bureaucrats that have been involved in the criminal justice system, who are all buddies with each other. So you think they're going to hold a cop to account? Again, unless it's in the newspaper, front page of the fucking newspaper, all this stuff just disappears and it just goes away. And it never happened. and paperwork is fudged, paperwork goes missing, paperwork, you don't know what they're writing on your paperwork. I mean, how did I know in 2015 that the Vancouver police were writing that I didn't even know who the victim was? How would I know that? Except in 2024, and I decide, hey, why don't I do an FOI just for curiosity to see what comes up? And then I'm finding out that they were writing down fabrications. They were writing down bold-faced fucking lies. And they were not telling me that they had a call from the Ministry of Children and Family Development, which is the BC government. A very dubious man named William Strickland had called them and said, ignore the rape, please. For whatever reason. Maybe the politics, maybe there was too many rapes and the politicians wanted to bring down the numbers. Why would he make that phone call? That is sick and it is wrong. And it's not like I had pulled this out of my ass. I had, I still can recite exactly what I saw in that rape from 30 years ago, piece by piece by piece. I have never forgotten what I saw. It's disturbing. It's disgusting. It is something that, turned me inside out. It made me sick to my stomach for a long, long time. It still makes me sick to my stomach. And not only that, there was audio evidence of me in 2008 talking about that rape, because I had told her about that rape the day after it happened, because it happened at night. The next morning I had told her what I had seen, and she said, no, just kind of ignore it, right? I mean, this is a Catholic family. Just ignore it, and we'll talk about it later. And then it became, you didn't see what you saw, and you blah, 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 and all the gibberish jabber, right? And then it just the can got kicked down the road. I do have to say that the Catholic family put locks on the victim's door. That's how they handled the rape, because they didn't want to embarrass the family. There wasn't just me that knew about this rape, that this kid, I think he was a regular victim. I think this was not the first time that he had been sexually abused. I fully believe this was an ongoing issue. And when I talked to the new inspector, I don't get your hopes up. Remember, there is an inspector now working on this, right? Kinda, but what are you going to do? This is from 30 years ago, right? What are they going to do? Unless there was some kind of, unless the victim wanted to come forward, unless new victims came forward, which they would never know who, never joined the dots, because all this stuff is secret and hidden, right? I mean, even from me, a lot of this, when I do my FOIs redacted, and that means it's blacked out, I don't even get to see most of what the police said, or even my own statements I don't get to see. It's fucking, the system is rotten. It's broken. Unless you work for the government, it's not broken, because then you just create more and more and more and more work, right? It's not broken for the police because they just create more and more and more work and do a shittier job. Let the perps slip through their fingers, and that just creates more and more files and and more work for the Office of the Police Commissioner, and then they're overworked, and then apparently you got calls coming in all over the place, right, when they don't want to talk anymore. Oh God. So yeah, you can imagine I got to make light of this in some regard, but I'll tell you, Canada is a corrupt, nasty place. We may be smiles, but it's not a good place. I fortunately live in a good place now. I don't live anywhere near Vancouver. But I'm sure these kind of crimes happen everywhere. But I'm older now, my kids are grown up now. I can't hear the victims scream from where I live, which is good, right? But I can assure you that any day of the week there is brutal rape of children happening, and the Vancouver police, and maybe the police in general and the government, willfully ignore it, right? I do know, just to ramble on here a little bit longer, I do know that there was a major bust of a child sex trafficking ring a couple weeks ago that made the newspaper. It was absolutely massive. It's not the first one. There was one a few years ago. I think it was the Ontario police, and they had captured or charged. It was like 40 people or 50 people or something like that with sex crimes. It is a massive, massive industry in Canada. I think bigger than anyone can imagine. But it's gotten big because of most officers, or at least a percentage of officers, just do not do their job. They're lazy, they're corrupt, they're dysfunctional, they're mean, you know. I mean, these officers that beat Miles Gray, you know, they were having a bad day, so they fucking murdered him. It just makes me sick to my stomach. But the thing is everyone has a bad day, right? I haven't murdered anybody, I haven't raped anyone, I've never had a day that bad. But if someone does have a day that bad, they should be held to account. And the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner does not hold police officers to account. Anyways, this conversation happened on Wednesday, May the 29th, 2024, and it is 3:16 p.m. in the afternoon.